What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Trippe. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Live podcast. We interview the very best real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders all throughout this country. And today I am super excited. We have an incredible guest, Mr. Jamil Damji from Phoenix, Arizona. How's it going today, Jamil?
I'm fantastic, Brian. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm good, and I'm really excited to talk to you for a lot of reasons. Obviously, you're doing an incredible amount of volume when it comes to wholesaling real estate. And when I say incredible, some people are like, what is he doing? 10 deals, 15 deals a month? It's not even anywhere near that number. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. But you also are involved with astro flipping.
Correct.
So I want to really understand what that is. I'm sure like some of the people who might be watching this or listening to this have either seen that, those ads come across their screen on Facebook and Instagram like I have. We want to try to dig into that and see what that's all about as well. And really just kind of get to know you and your story. So I'd love for you to start right there, Jamil. Tell everybody who you are and how you got into real estate and what you're up to today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that introduction, Brian. I appreciate it. So I'm Jamil Damji. I currently live in Phoenix, Arizona, and how I got into real estate, really fun story. So I was in a completely different industry. I was in the new media industry in like 2002. We were at the forefront of talking to businesses about upgrading their websites, and people were like, "A website? What is that?" It was a really fun time. But in that, I worked in a business where my partner, his father was a home builder. And I was watching all of this activity. His dad would come in and out of the office, and his son was telling me, oh my God, they're building all these houses and making all this money. But the problem that they're having is they can't find these building lots. They're looking for these 50-foot by 120 building lots in these specific areas in the city. And I'm talking about the city of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
Way out there. So, my mind started to really percolate at that, right? Because he's telling me there's a need for this specific type of property. Now I look outside my window and all I see are houses, right? So I feel inspired to help fill a need. And so I start asking him questions. Is there any barriers, or, is it just 50 by 120? Is there specific streets, or, and he gave me the details that I needed. And, it just so happened I lived in a neighborhood where this kind of activity was happening. And one morning when I'm walking my dog, I see a for rent sign, on a lawn. And my head just, started banging, and I went and got my local newspaper. And at that time, all of the rentals were in the back of the newspaper in the classified section. So it had been about the 5th of the month, past the 1st, which is when landlords are trying to have their place filled. So I knew this house didn't have a tenant. A landlord was looking for a tenant, and these properties were still available. So I went down the list, and I just kind of subdivided the list of, this could be in this specific area, this might be in this area, and I called everybody. And I came across, in my first time ever trying, I know this is like beginner's luck, and sometimes it's just serendipity that gets you in, puts you in a position, and then you grow from there. But I called this lady. She had a rental. It was on a property that was a 50 by 120. And before I had even talked to her, I found out from my friend what his father and his friends were paying for this type of property. And he told me it was somewhere around, $400,000. And so, I'm ambitious, and I'm on the phone with this woman, and I start talking to her about what she thinks her property is worth, and she's really, really feeling like her house is worth $350. And so right there, I realize there's a gap, right? I think there's a chance for me to make a check here, but I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do. I've never seen a real estate purchase contract. I don't even have access to them. There's no internet for me to download. Well, there is an internet, but there's not an internet that I'm really messing with, because it's still the time of AOL and dial-up, and everything's just really bad, right? And so, I start asking questions, and this guy, his father, they were really helpful. They gave me a copy of a purchase contract. They told me if I wanted to, be able to use their funds to close my transaction, that I would be doing something called a skip transfer, which is what they call it in Canada. And that's where you write your name as, Jamil Damji and or assignee, and that'll allow me the right to assign my position in the contract. And so I'm really, kind of winging it at this point, but I go meet this lady. I've got some of the contract pre-filled out because they helped me with it. She signs, and true to their word, my friend and partner's father actually purchased the property from me for $400,000. So my first real estate transaction was a wholesale deal where I made $50K, and it didn't happen like that afterwards for a while. So it was a really great and awesome start to it. But yeah, that's how I got involved in real estate in the first place. Real
that
weird.
is such an incredible story.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I've heard too, and I'm not from Canada, but I heard even doing this kind of stuff in Canada is way different and way hard. Some people say it's really hard.
It's super hard. It's super hard because you got to find friendly attorneys. There's no private money out there. Right. And so, and hard money doesn't exist because of usury laws. Right. And so the only way to really get financing is a traditional mortgage through a bank. And so volume wholesale or rapid wholesaling is not possible in Canada just because of the fact that there's no private lending. However, people still buy in cash, and this builder did have access to that type of cash, and so they were able to close on the transaction quick. But that's the issue out there, is just the access to private money.
So you didn't even know what wholesaling was. You thought you invented wholesaling.
I did. It's the weirdest thing, man. I thought I had this cool ninja trick where you can make money by just talking to this person on the 5th of the month and looking trying to find what this guy might want. And it was totally rogue. It was completely unorganized. And, but it was it's that beautiful thing of just, of finding a need and then doing everything you can mentally to fill that need. Right. And then when you can do that, you're just taking steps, and then it all kind of falls into place.
That's entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
That right there is entrepreneurship in its purest form. Is there's a need, and we're going to go out there and whatever it takes, we're going to fill that need and hopefully profit, and hopefully we're going to make money at that. But it's just finding a need and fulfilling a need, and you did that. So keep going on with the story. First of all, how old were you when you did this?
So I at that time would have been 20. Gosh, so it would be 2000. I'm terrible at math. Fast math. So I'm in my early 20s. I'm in my early 20s.
And you were just doing websites, and then all of a sudden you come across 50K. It's almost like 50K dropped out of the sky.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I took that money, and it was the seed capital to everything else. Right. So keep going on with the story. What did you do after that? What is everything else? So what was next? So what I was finding, and I always had big eyes. Right. And so I'm like, okay, well, what's the next thing? What are people looking for? And so finding these 50 by 120 lots became a thing for me for about a year. I did do probably 10 transactions through that year where I would just identify these lots and sell them to these builders that I had connected with. And so that worked. I was making money. I probably made a couple $100,000. The first year I was doing this, just identifying those. Not every deal was 50K after that. There were normal deals after that. And then I went to apartment buildings because I saw that these developers moved from new construction and started converting these old apartments. And the beauty of apartments for me at that time was just how easy it was to find the seller, because a lot of these guys are self-managed, right? These 15, 16, 20 unit buildings are self-managed, and those little hand scribbled for rent signs that you see, you're talking to the dude. You're talking to the guy who owns that place. And so what I did next was I connected with the developers who were doing these condo conversions. And I was finding out, what were the barriers that they were looking for? The same questions I asked the first time, right? What makes you want this versus not want this, right? And I learned you needed to have 50% parking. So if I was an apartment building without 50% parking was useless because they'd never be able to get strata title, which is when they take an apartment and individually title each unit into its own APN, as we call them here, right? And so if they didn't have 50% parking, I would keep moving. But if they had 50% parking, then it was a matter of talking about suite mix, how many ones versus how many twos, Have you done any upgrade to your fire? Have you done any upgrade to, to the electrical, to the plumbing? No. Great. You're a perfect building for me to reposition. And then I would talk to them about, what are they looking for in terms of numbers? And a lot of these guys really don't know. They've been passed these buildings down, or they've owned them for years, decades, and they're getting tired. They're just not interested in being a property manager anymore. And you can tell, just by the condition of the property and the condition of the tenants and the price that they're renting for when they're under rented, that if you're not going to put the effort out to really maximize your rents, you're probably going to take a convenience offer, right? And so, again, I started down that path of just calling for rents in apartments. And you would be surprised at how many owners were answering. And so I got into flipping apartment buildings. Then my wholesale fees started turning into $100K, $150K. And then my eyes got even bigger because I thought, wow, how amazing. But who's really making the money? The guys doing the condo conversions. And so, the natural progression is always to think the grass is greener on the other side. Mm-hmm. And so we took a lot of the resources that we had, my sister, when I say we, I mean my sister and I, we took the resources that we had accumulated and got involved in condo conversions ourselves. And that's where the ride turned.
Is this all in Canada, by the way, or had you moved by then? Okay.
No, this is all in Canada.
All right. Well, don't leave us hanging, man.
So the ride turned. We got involved in condo conversions. We went big, as like I like to do.
And what year is this? Is this around the bubble?
This is at the bubble, top of the bubble. So 2005, we had end of 2004, early 2005, we had a couple of really successful projects under our belt. So, we find these apartments, we would do the work, construction. It was interesting how they would do it in Canada. The banks would finance us. Everything is really closed there, right? There's not a lot of lenders. There's not a lot of institutions. So it's what in America we call a lot of double dealing, or things that you can't really do legally here. They love doing over there, and it's sanctioned, right? You're totally okay to do it. And so in the lenders that we were using, they were requiring us to really push them to be the lender for the end consumer. So they would want to set up a full sales office. And if we could direct 50% of the pre-sales to them, then they would give us the construction financing that we needed to complete the project. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it was always like, twofold. You'd want to find the property, and then you'd want to be able to convince these, buyers that you have a good product and that they should use this lender so that you could gain financing, right? So you're always trying to create rebates or some form of incentivization for buyers to use these lenders. I don't think a lot of that would fly here, but it did over there. But what that put us in a position of was where we really had no one to look to when things turned wrong, right? And so after our first two successful projects, we did really well on them. My sister and I decided we were going to really double down and put every dime in. So we bought 4 buildings, and we went after it. As everyone else knows, who's watching, the market very, very quickly turned. And so the same lender who had pre-qualified all of our buyers, now we're recalling all those pre-qualifications, right? Because they have the ability to do that. Yeah. And so now the construction loan that they gave us was based off of those pre-sales, which they now have taken away. And with those taken away, that loan is now due. And so they called in our loan, right? And so we not only could we not debt service, they call in our loan, and now all of a sudden we're in a position where we owe millions and millions of dollars to lenders that we can't come up with. And so, it was a terrible time that we went through. But I learned a lot. I learned a lot through that. I learned about leverage. I learned about, what's too risky versus, smart money. And I think this time around we've done it a little better.
Yeah. So let's talk about that this time around. So at that point, I typically ask a lot of people who've been in it pre 07, pre 08. You said you learned a lot. You learned a lot about leverage. You learned about obviously you learned that wholesaling might be better.
Of course.
than actually acquiring and taking on a lot of risk.
Yes.
So talk about that. How did you make the shift in the transition from Canada to Phoenix? When did you do that? And then when did you get right back into wholesaling, or did you?
Yeah. So I love the question. So we, I hadn't had experience with taking a loss like that. You know, and when the banks come calling, it's aggressive, right? They're calling you. You know, they started taking away our homes. They came and took away my vehicles. They took away my parents' vehicles. You know, they evicted my mom and my dad. And so I'm seeing my family just get devastated, right? We're all becoming homeless. And just so it just so happened that at the same time I was trying to express myself creatively, and I was tinkering in some comedy writing. And you know, I thought, hey, you know, I'm just gonna go after this. And you know, I got a script optioned, which was super rare thing. Again, another like beginner's luck, rare thing that happened in Hollywood. It very rarely happens, but the show never got made, but they optioned the script, which was cool. Gave me a little bit of money to move my family out. And I was an American citizen because I was born in Los Angeles. Even though I grew up in Canada, I had the ability to come to the States. And so I thought, you know what, I'm done. I think I'm out of real estate. That was fun while it was there, but super stressful. I'm really, you know, wanting to do something else with myself. And so I went all in on comedy. I became a stand-up comic, man.
Is there, Jamil, is there anything out there? Can we like right now just pause the video for our listeners and plug something in right now? Is there anything on the internet, anything anywhere where we could plug it in right here in this moment?
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
Okay. Because I think
terribly embarrassing. It's terribly embarrassing.
Is it that bad?
Well, no, my stand-up was funny, but some of the sketches I did, I don't know if you are familiar with a website called Funny or Die. It's a great site, some fun stuff on there. I did some sketches that were there. And there might just be one sketch floating around in the internet where it's me, a glory hole, and a hamburger joint.
Okay, we won't put that one on here. So what about the stand-up? Is the stand-up out there?
There's some stand-up out there. You know, the thing about stand-up is you can't really record a lot of that. So you know, I'm sure I got some tape somewhere. I'm gonna look in my old computers and see if I can find a link. I'll send it to you.
We want to know. We want to hear what Jamil was like in 2000. Yeah. What'd you say, 2010?
I was sad, man. I was like a really sad comic because I had just like, I was young and I lost all my money, and you know, I thought the world just sucked at that time. I thought everything was really bad, and you could tell I went dark. Right? I went pretty dark for a minute, but it was great. It was a good time.
So real estate at that point, you know, especially you just got done saying, you know, your parents got evicted. You don't really know what's going to happen.
No.
And just by chance, something happens where you get to move back out to LA. At that point, real estate has to be something that has a bad taste in your mouth. You just got done saying
totally.
You went dark. There's no way you're getting back into real estate ever again.
No.
So what happened to get you back in?
So, you know, I'm working in LA, I'm making a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, but living in Los Angeles is oppressively expensive, right? And so I'm trying to come up with ways to supplement my income so that I can afford rent, right? Just because like rent's like $3,000, $4,000 for like a normal place, right? And so what I learned very, very quickly was over here in Phoenix, Arizona, you know, you can buy a place because the market had tanked, and you could buy these buildings. You could buy these units in these buildings that were built 2004, 2005 with granite countertops and hardwood floors and beautiful kitchens in them for like $30,000. And they're still renting for $800 a unit, right? Because the rents hadn't depressed yet. And so I just start buying. I'm working, I'm saving. My sister's working, she's saving. And we just start buying these units in Phoenix, Arizona. We start buying these 2-bedroom, 2-bath condos.
But how? I mean, you save that much money?
So yeah, so you know, every time you do like a project, you know, in that world, you make somewhere between 30, 35, 50K kind of deal. Like that's what they pay you in like lump sums. At the same time, my sister's in Regina, Saskatchewan, working on some property management and some other. We had a couple of squirreled away investments that she was able to reposition and grow into some extra capital. And so we think we were working with like, you know, $200,000 we were able to like put together between us. But again, you know, that's because I come from a family where we all lived out of like one pot. That's all of us, right? That's me, my sister, my mom, my dad, my dog, my cat, you know, and my niece, like everybody. We're all grabbing from the same pocket. And we're having a hard time helping me live in Los Angeles. Like I can't make the rent. I can't come up with this money every month. And so we just start buying these condos in Phoenix. We're buying them for 30, some for 25, and renting them out. We were thinking for around, 750, 800. Time goes by. We accumulate a few of these units, and there's no rental income coming in, right? Like we're talking to our property manager, and he's telling us, hey guys, I'm sorry, there's just nobody here renting. The markets are completely wrecked. I'm doing everything I can, but I'm sorry, I just can't get these places rented. And we believe them, right? We believe this is what's going on. But I take the drive out anyways, because there's something that's, I think maybe I can do more. Maybe I'll put out some for rent signs on the street corners, and I'll put them up at convenience stores. And I just felt like I would do more for myself because it's our money, right? So I make the 5 hour drive from LA to Phoenix, and I just start, I go to the building that we purchased a lot of units in, and I, start looking for the unit numbers because I hadn't even visited these places. I bought them off pictures basically, and I start knocking on doors, and people are answering the door, and there's people renting my places, and my property manager is just pocketing the cash. And so, that happens, and I have a conversation with him. I told him, he had a couple minutes to get, to leave, and I wouldn't call the cops, and he did. And, that let me know that I had to definitely pay more attention to what was going on in Phoenix. I still hadn't decided to get involved in wholesaling. That's a completely different situation that brought me to that. But I was back in real estate now, I'm owning property and I'm doing stuff.
I can't even imagine the feeling you must have felt to make that 5 hour drive to Phoenix and to knock on these doors and kind of for it to come to your mind what was actually happening. And I'm sure to not only, think of what's going on in that moment, but to think back in that moment of like all the disaster, all the highs and the lows that you've already experienced in real estate, to where it's like almost like here we go again type of thing.
Of course. I think at that time, what really resonated with me, and we're all different, right? So we'll empathize with things in a different way. I really just looked at the guy who was pocketing the money, and I saw the way he was living, and I just saw what he was doing. And a part of me felt like it's hard. And I wouldn't have done what you did, but a part of me gets it. This isn't easy. We're all suffering right now. And you took the easy way here. And that's a shame that you did that. But I don't want to see you get taken away from your daughter. I don't want to see you go to prison. But I don't want to see you in my face either. So I just need you to leave. I'm gonna handle, forgiveness and dealing with what you've done at a different time. And I've forgiven that guy. I really, in fact, I wish him all the best. I hope that life has turned around and that he's found a way to be happy and do well.
Jamil, I also want to touch on something before we kind of get into the wholesaling stuff, which I hope you got some time. I didn't even ask you how much time you got.
All the time in the world, bro.
Great. Awesome. Before we get into the wholesaling stuff, which is, I think, going to be its own fascinating kind of story, I want to go back to something you said a second ago that I think that our culture here doesn't really understand. And I don't know where you're from, and I don't know, what your background is or where your parents came from or anything like that. But you said something that I think is really interesting that I don't hear a lot. And you said that you and your family, it was you, your sister, your mom, your dad, your dog, your cat. It was all of you pulling resources together because it was all kind of one bucket, one pot. Talk about where does that mentality come from, and what does that actually do for you internally when it comes to business?
It came from my parents. They just raised us well, Sorry, it gets me a little emotional thinking about it, but like they taught me and my sister to look after each other. They're like, it's you two, it's us, and it's you two. Don't ever let each other go. And so that's where it came from.
And just talk, because I just don't, like I said, I just don't see that a lot.
Yeah.
And to understand how successful you've been at business, you were successful before too.
Right.
Just because some unfortunate things happened didn't mean that you weren't just super, super successful at what you were doing. And you have that entrepreneurship, thing totally down. What does that mentality do for you business wise?
It makes me 5 people. I mean, I'm good as one guy, but as 5, I'm the best. Because not only do I believe in myself, but my mom believes in me. My dad believes in me. My sister believes in me. My niece believes in me. My dog and cat believe in me.
Even after what happened.
Yeah. Man, it was the hardest part for me was like my father co-signing those loans and becoming homeless because of us, right? That he didn't once blame me. He never said, you ruined my life. Because of you, I'm like living in this 2-bedroom shack with all of you guys. And, no, my dad never did that. My dad was like, son, shit happens and it's hard. But you know what? We're all here. We're all together. That's what matters. We're together. And as long as we're together, we'll be fine.
I don't think enough people kind of give credit to, influences like that. You had parents which sound like they were incredible influences in your life. I didn't have that. A lot of people listening to this probably may not have had that. There are a lot of people today in today's age. It's just statistics. There's so many more people today without 2-parent households and things like that. And just go back, like, Jamil, just like, is there a memory or two from when you were a kid that you can think of that is just like your parents did this, your dad did this or said this, and your mom, something that really comes to mind that made you the entrepreneur that you are today?
I think it was my grandfather. My grandfather, his name was Blaza, Blaza, and cool name and even cooler guy. He, my parents are from colonialism, right? So both of my parents, even though I'm Indian, East Indian by descent, so ethnically I'm, my people are from India, but both of my parents were born in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And because colonialism took our people to Africa, right? And so in that time, my grandfather, he was always industrious. He was an entrepreneur, but he was also a giver, right? And he had found ways to pool resources, to pool talent, to pool people, bridging, African culture and Indian culture and the British, and being able to be friends with everybody who was a part of his little, group. And he started an auto parts company in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And my father and his brother, 5 brothers and 1 sister, they all worked in that auto parts store. And there was a time in the 70s when Africa was nationalizing, and there was a dictator by the name of Idi Amin who was creating a lot of conflict for Asians that were residing in East Africa at the time. And we essentially had 72 hours to vacate the country. And, this is a different time. And so at that time, the Canadian and the US governments they stopped all commercial flights, and they sent all the planes to evacuate us out of that humanitarian crisis. And so that's how we ended up in the West.
What year was that?
That would have been, so I'm not alive, but my parents would have been like 1971, 72-ish.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
Right. So
you weren't alive yet.
I wasn't alive.
Gotcha.
But my parents, they first landed in London, England. My sister's born. And then from there, they migrate to the United States. I'm born sometime later, and then we moved from the U.S. when I was around 4 or 5 to Canada.
Wow.
But just then, my dad and his whole family, his brothers, his 5 brothers and his sister, they ran a truck wash together. And I watched them my whole life, shoveling gravel and washing trucks. And, I used to take my bike out there over the summer, and I used to ride my bike all around this little industrial park, and there was fun, like, places to go and do stuff. And I just remember how they all interacted. They'd yell and scream, but they'd love each other, and they all drove in the same car to work every day. So my whole life I got to see, my uncles come in their old dusty Cadillac, pick up my dad in his blue coveralls. And for 30 years, that's what they did. They would all carpool together and go to that greasy truck stop, and they just worked for a small check.
And Jamil, I appreciate you sharing that. I think I think we can all get a lot out of that. There's just not enough of that going on today, at least from my eyes, that we see. Right. Our culture here is there's just not a lot of that going on. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
Talk about now how you kind of transition back into wholesaling.
Okay.
And then also, infuse, some of the rest of the story in with, how you're operating your business today. And are there signs of some of these things that, you saw from your uncles and your dad and things like that?
Of course. So what brought me back to wholesaling? So I'm still in Los Angeles. I figured out the property management fiasco. I now have control of it. So, I've got tenants. I've got some cash flow coming out of these units. We're a little bit more comfortable, right? So my sister and I are starting to feel more comfortable about buying again, cash flow. We're seeing like, okay, well, this looks like a good avenue to gain some cash flow for very little investment. So let's keep doing it. And so we put offers on 2 short sales in Glendale, Arizona. It was these 2 bungalows, 3-bed, 2 baths. And again, I think we picked up one for $70K and the other one for like $75K. And so I'm in these short sales, and you know how short sales are at that time. They're taking forever to get approved, right? And so I write the offers on these contracts through a realtor, and I think 4 or 5 months go by, and I hear nothing. And so I almost forget about them. I don't even remember like that we did that, and it's kind of there, but not at the forefront of my mind. All of a sudden I get a call from the agent. She's like, guess what? Your short sales were approved, and we got about 20 days to close. And I was like, okay, cool. And then, I get off the phone with her and I call my sister, and I thought, what are we doing with these? Like, these are houses. These aren't condos. They've got pools, so I'm not really feeling like they're what we want to keep for a rental. I don't know. The pricing seems good, but I just don't know if it's something we should keep, and I definitely don't want to fix and flip it. So, what do you think we should do with them? And she thought, well, could we close them and sell them? And I thought, yeah, possibly. Let me tinker around with what that looks like. And so we get off the phone, and I hop onto Craigslist. I've got the addresses. I've got pictures, from when I saw the houses originally. And so I just put up 2 ads on Craigslist, and I put the addresses. I added 10 grand onto each house because I thought, I'm going to buy them, we'll close them, and then somebody will buy them from me, and maybe we'll make, 10 grand on each house. That would be super cool. It wasn't like 5 minutes. I put these 2 houses on Craigslist, and I get a call from a guy named Tim Wynn from Phoenix. And super sweet guy calls me and says, I like these. I'm going to drive by them, but I think I'm going to take them. And, just his flippant attitude with like, I'm going to buy these. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, you're on Craigslist, right? So cool. Yeah. Let me know when you've made your decision. And, he calls me a couple hours later, and he's like, yeah, we're good to go. I'm fully in. So, again, I don't know how this works now, because the first time I'd done this, I was in Canada.
No.
And so I don't know the laws. I don't know the documents. I don't know how to make it work. It's a little trickier because there were short sales. And so he basically guides me through how to structure and complete these transactions, right? So we close them. He actually, he took a big risk because he used his money to fund these deals, even though he wasn't taking title to them. And so, but that's how people were buying at that time. They were, if you were wholesaling short sales at that time, you had to trust people because you couldn't really convey title, right?
You can't assign them.
You
have
can't
to
assign. There was
Yeah.
deed restrictions on them. Each of them had a 30-day deed restriction, so that had to be handled. But this guy, super classy team. He has a partner named Mike Lima. Their company's True Freedom Achievers. They're wholesalers here, competitors of ours, but I love them both dearly. So we get through this deal and we make some money. And Tim's just said, "Hey man, so what are you doing out there in Los Angeles? Because it seems like you know a lot about real estate and you understand and you know what I'm talking about, but like, why aren't you doing this? Because you saw how easy it was for you to make like 20 grand. So what are you doing?" And I gave him a little bit of my history and said, I don't know how I feel about it, but I don't really know Phoenix. I don't know what's going on out there. How would I do that again? And so he invited me out to hang out with him for a week and said, just hang out with me. Come, I'll take you to all the best places to eat. You can drive around with me and I'll show you what I'm doing. And, if you think it's something you want to do, then cool. And I was like, okay, because like I'm looking around, I got nothing happening in LA. The Laugh Factory and the Comedy Store aren't going to care if I don't show up. So, I'm not like a headliner or anything. I'm not crushing it in that world. So I had the time and I took him up on it. I came out, I hung out with him for a week, and that guy changed my life. Wow. Because I watched him literally make $50K that week in wholesale deals. And my eyes just like popped out of my head.
What year was that, Jamil?
That would have been 2000 and the beginning of 2012.
Yeah.
Actually, no, the middle of 2012.
Yeah, that's exactly when I got into real estate.
Awesome.
And so
perfect timing.
Everything that exactly. Everything that you're saying right now is really resonating with me with how short sales were going and with just like, everything with like the 10K thing, like
yeah.
For $10,000, that was like if I could do a wholesale deal bigger than that, then I just didn't think it was possible. Like 10K,
right.
Like huge. It was just a huge deal.
Of course.
So how do you go now you're back in it. I'm going to fast forward the story a little bit. You obviously moved to Phoenix because
yep.
you understand a little bit more of the market. You got connections there, things like that. At what point do you actually like start really blowing this thing out of the water?
So I'm working with Tim and Mike for some time. I'm a little bit green because I'm, like any new investor working with a seasoned wholesaler, you think you're bringing value to the table. I really had this idea that, I'm bringing the deals. I'm the man. I'm the guy. It's like these guys were giving me education. These guys were showing me what to do, And so a part of me was, I'm just going to be real about it. A part of me was super ambitious. And then, when we were talking about splitting our profits, the splits weren't going to be as even as I wanted them to be. And, I didn't realize what it took to run a wholesale operation at that time. And so I told the two of them, politely that I was going to go out and try to do this on my own. And again, like the classy, gracious people that they were, after giving me all that knowledge and showing me so much, they wished me on my way and said, if you have a deal that we can buy, we'd love to continue to do business with you. This is like tantamount to like the what Phoenix is all about, right? It's a very loving environment when it comes to how we interact with each other as wholesalers here. And yeah, man, Tim and Mike, they continued to do business with me. They'd buy from me here and there. But I had already gotten that knowledge of, okay, so this is how you identify a deal. And so all I'm going to do now is that over and over and over and over again. So I was strictly going after short sales and foreclosures at that time, tying them up, and then, obviously trying to find buyers because you have that long escrow period. So that becomes a thing. I do that for some time. I make some connections from buyers. Buyers are becoming steady clients at this point, and that's all great. I start to grow my network of realtors and other bird dogs that were feeding me deals, and so that starts to kind of grow. And then I move my whole family out, right? So I like we would do. I bring my mom and dad and my sister out to Phoenix, and we all move in a house together. Actually, we started in a little condo. little 2-bedroom condo, and then we moved into a little house in Glendale, and we all lived together for a little while. I'm now, 30. I'm a man. I'm gray in my beard. I'm living at my parents' house, right? And so that's just what I did. I continued to grow that. And I basically operated as a solopreneur. My sister on the background, but me just kind of out there pounding the pavement and knocking on doors and doing the things that I was doing, building buyers and finding houses. And I did that for, right up until Keighley happened.
So what happened?
Till Keighley, our wholesale operation.
Yeah, I want you to talk about Keighley because it sounds like the Glee Club.
Yeah, I mean, it's cute, right? Isn't that the cutest name for a whosale company you've ever heard?
Really, that's the best word to describe it. It's cute.
Yeah, it's cute. It's super cute. And our office here, do you mind? Is it really disruptive for me to show you just outside my window? Right. So
the podcast listeners aren't going to be able to get,
okay. They're not going to see all that, but outside my window, just outside my little window there, it's like boiler room, right? So, but it's also like the Ellen show meets boiler room because everybody's so happy. Everyone's smiling out there. They're all smiling. They're on the phone. They're doing deals. They're loving life.
I just saw an empty room. Were there people?
No, there's people there. Yeah, I did a bad job of moving my computer. Yeah, it's full of people. Like
there's nobody there. What are you talking about? You're not doing any business.
There's like 30 of us here.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I do have a couple of specific questions I'll get back to in a second, though. Let's talk about Keighley. What does it look like today?
So about 40 staff. The majority of us are located.
40 staff?
Yeah.
All right.
The majority of us are in Phoenix, Arizona. I'll give you a quick breakdown of how that 40 is kind of divvied up. So there's some core admin people. We've got about 4 core admin. They're handling transaction coordinating, office, HR, just the regular, tasks in that nature, general manager stuff. Then we have our acquisitions guys, which their job is to bring in deals. And we have actually fewer acquisitions guys than anything else in any other department. So we got about 8 solid act guys that are out there just pounding the phones and the pavement, doing their thing, getting deals. And then we have about 10 disposition guys, right? So we're talking guys who are on the phone, talking to buyers, really connecting, finding out what they're looking for. And then everybody else is in tech and intake. And so I'll split those 2 departments up for you. So tech is all of our systems, the integrating our systems, how we text, how we call, how we communicate internally, our website, our outward facing website, our inward facing website, just all of the little systems and automations that we use are built and managed daily by tech. Everything breaks all the time. Even when it's built like super well, things just break. So we have on-site people to help us get things going so we don't have like big lapses in time where we're not productive. And then intake, those are our guys that are there building our buyers lists. So that's our biggest department in our entire company. And they spend their entire day finding and acquiring, having buyers opt into our lists and establishing that first touch, which then goes to a dispositions director who then creates the relationship. But bringing them in the door happens at intake, hence the name.
This is really interesting. And obviously, you know where I'm about to go because you said you have 40 staff-ish.
Yep.
8 on the acquisition side.
Yep. And I just looked, it's actually closer to 11 right now for ACT. So
11.
We did some new hires. Yeah. So that's 11.
11, 4 admin. You got 15 of the 40. You got less than 50% acquiring a property and doing some sort of admin. Half of the people on your staff are either dealing with the tech or they're building buyers lists. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
So that poses, so you hear a lot of people, there's a big debate going on right now. You hear a lot of people saying, if you have a great deal, then the buyer will come.
Honestly, that's the reason why we have so many so much gray area and so much negativity surrounding wholesaling, because no, I call BS on that.
Okay.
1,000%. And the reason why I do is because what we're doing is we're basically, it's like, you know, when you go to the gym, right? You see all those guys in there doing bench presses and shoulder presses and bicep curls, and no one's touching their legs, right? A wholesale transaction is two parts. It's the buy and the sell. If you're not selling the deal, you're not cashing the check. And what's happening all across town in every major market, in every city in the US, cancellation after cancellation after cancellation. Seller stood up. Seller completely left to hang out to dry. Seller disappointed. Seller completely just shaken by real estate investors not being real. Come on. It's that attitude of, if the good deal is good enough, it'll sell itself. No, because we're not educating people properly on how to identify good deals. And what's to say what's a good deal? Because some fix and flip guys, they want to buy at 70% of ARV. Some guys think that they can buy at 50% of ARV. And some guys just want to buy with a little bit of equity. There's a lot of institutional buyers out there that are buying at 90 cents on the dollar. There are a lot of portfolio managers out there buying at 90 cents on the dollar. So why are we just limiting our minds and limiting the people that are getting into this business to tell them, find a good enough deal and it'll sell itself? Yeah, if you want to do 2 deals a year.
You're not passionate about this at all.
No, I think it's irresponsible. I think it's irresponsible that we're not being honest about the way that the market, or the way that our market really works, the way that our business model really works. We're just telling these kids to get out there and tie everything up, right? That's essentially what is happening. We're telling these guys, get out there and just write contracts, just blanket the world with contracts, and you'll make some money. Yeah, okay, you might, but you're going to ruin your name because you're going to be, you know, cancellation Charlie, and that's not fun. Nobody wants to be that guy. So that's why we pick the other side of the street.
So let me ask you a follow up to that then, because I think this is a great point. I love this. I love we're talking about this, and I love that it's firing you up too.
Yeah.
So how do you teach? What do you tell your intake people looking for buyers? What do they say? What do they do? Give us you don't have to give us everything. Give us a tip or 2 or 3. This is exactly what you tell them to go do.
Awesome. So, it's the obvious choices of where to find cash buyers. Everybody knows tax records. Let's think outside of that box. We all know about that box, right? That's the same sandbox where everybody's buyer. That's where we all have the same buyer guy. Forget him. But what about the guy who is liking the Rolex page, liking the Ferrari page, and then you check his Facebook out, and his profile picture is him driving a Ferrari? Okay? You're telling me that guy doesn't buy real estate? And are you telling me that guy maybe shouldn't have bought real estate instead of that Ferrari? Maybe, right? So we start there. We look at disposable income. We look at habits. We look at where are you? What are you doing in your day? How are you living? Right? Because a lot of those people have cash and they have no instrument to protect that capital, right? Capital protection, which is the reason why the hedge funds are out there buying anyways, right? Because we've looked at the numbers. If you're like me and if you're looking at the contract that the hedge fund sends you when they buy your deal, and you're like, what are you doing with this? Because this makes no sense. Why are you buying? Then the obvious answer is capital protection, right? They are protecting against inflation. That's all they're trying to do. So with that said, a smart individual who's made enough money in his life to buy a Ferrari and wear a presidential Rolex understands capital protection, understands inflation, also understands that having 800 grand in your bank is stupid, right? So we have conversations. We have real conversations just about, what are you doing? Are you involved in investment real estate? Would being able to have access to properties that are discounted by 15 to 20 to 30% off of their value be something you'd be interested in getting more information on? Yes. Okay. Would you mind opting in and we can have further discussions? Yes. So they opt in.
So this is through some sort of Facebook ad or some sort of
it's outreach. We're not fans of ads. I'm not a big fan of like passively spending money and waiting for the phone to ring. You know, we have to do that a little bit on the education side, and that's just what it is. But when it comes to wholesaling, we're really aggressive, right? We go out there and we do the outreach. We touch.
And here's the interesting thing about what you're saying right now is, so we're in Birmingham. You know, I live in Birmingham. This is a cash flowing market. We're not volatile like a lot of those West Coast cities, you know, even the Phoenixes, stuff like that. We're a cash flowing market. People come to Birmingham from outside of Birmingham. People come into Birmingham to buy turnkey real estate. They want a property that's going to cash flow, the numbers work, things like that. And what I've seen the turnkey companies go out and do to acquire customers, to acquire buyers, is exactly what you just said. Mm-hmm. So they're going after the people with the disposable income, where to park money. Why aren't the wholesalers doing that?
Because they're still learning from the educators who did their last deals in 2004, right? And I'm not throwing shade out there. I'm being real, right?
No. The tactics still work.
Some of them.
This is just a newer. This is a way to. I feel like this is a way to sell property, because you know and I know, just of the age we're in today, that where properties are selling at all-time prices. Right. At least in Birmingham they are. I'm sure they are where you are too. Selling at all-time prices, and to get a deal for 60 and 70 cents on the dollar is a lot rarer than it used to be.
For sure.
Which means I don't want to sell to the fix and flip guy that wants it for 70 cents on the dollar. I want to sell to the fund manager that's going to buy it for 90 or 95 cents on the dollar.
Of course. And that's, I think, you know, that's a conversation that I think as a entire industry, we need to have, right? Is that when is there enough acquisitions, right? When is there too many people telemarketing? If you went into any of these major markets and you asked the wholesalers that are, you know, actively cold calling, what's the most common thing they hear? You're the 80th person to call me today. That's like what they're hearing on the phone. Like, you're the 10th person, you're the 50th person. Like, that's what's happening, right? Which tells me, great, we're learning, we're doing more act. Everybody's doing more act. Everyone's growing. Everyone's doing more act. Cool. But guys, nobody's figured out how to sell these deals. And when a seller gets touched 5, 10, 15, 20 times, or what do you think happens to their perception of their value? Right? It's a lot different than, you know, if you just randomly, you know, talk to somebody or met somebody that was interested in selling their home. They get an inflated idea, right? They think, oh my God, like, so many people are interested in buying my house. And so prices start to get higher and higher and higher. And then the newbie wholesaler who's just trying to do it, you know, trying to make a living and do their best, they come in and they don't really understand their numbers, and they're not learning comps from the right place. So they're going a mile or maybe even 2 miles out, you know, to pull their comps from different subdivisions and totally botching that. Then they're contracting these properties at these exorbitant numbers. And then all of a sudden now we've got a bad deal. Right now, all of a sudden, we've got a bad deal floating around, and nobody's going to buy it. So what does that turn into? A cancellation.
Yeah. And it all, I'm starting to understand your psychology here. It all kind of comes back. If you have buyers, that the more buyers you have that are going to pay, they're going to get a discount. They're not going to be buying at 100%. They're going to get a little bit of a discount. But if you got buyers who are not your normal professional real estate investor type of buyers that are willing to take 10% discounts, 15% discounts, maybe even 20% discounts, it allows you, as the acquisitions part of the side of the business, to not have to just rely on getting 50 and 60 and 70 cents on the dollar deals. Right. You can go a little bit higher. Therefore, you can pluck deals from anywhere. I heard you on another podcast say you don't really hardly do any paid marketing.
None. We do zero. In fact, we take you know, I like to use the music industry analogy because it makes sense to people. You look at the music business, and there's the label, and then there's artists, right? Well, who's got the power? It's always the label, because they have distribution. And so what we did is let's be the distributor, and let's be so good at it that we attract all the other wholesalers in our industry to come and work with us, because they know that we're going to be able to monetize deals that they won't be able to monetize. And so that created within itself a synergy, which allowed us to do this insane volume, because we're attracting just, not only are we getting our own deals, we're attracting other wholesalers' deals. They know that our distribution is on point, and so they trust us to sell their deals, and that's what we're doing.
And that's the majority of your business. What would you say is the percentage wise is other people bringing deals to you for you guys to sell?
I'd say we're about 70-30. 30% of it is our own. 70% of it is outside, others bringing it to us.
Which allows you to do, like, just give us, you don't have to be specific if you don't want to, but roughly how many deals did you do in 2018? How many are you projected to do this year?
It'll be a little over 1,018. And, this year I'm thinking 1,300 houses. Yeah.
So that's over 100. That's 100 a month.
Yeah, it gets there. When I'm talking all markets, right? So
let's talk about that. Break down your business, what it looks like.
So we are in multiple markets. We're in Phoenix, Arizona, which is the bulk of our business. So, 60 to 80 transactions a month is happening in Phoenix and Tucson. Like, I don't want to front and let people think that that's happening in every market we're in. It's not true. But what was happening to us, and the reason why we ventured out into other markets, is that we started to see the pressure on our assignment fee really start to contract, right? We went from, routinely making 12 to 15K in a deal, down to 10, down to 9, down to 8, down to like 6, and so we realized very quickly that our volume was increasing, but our profit margin per deal, and having such an extensive staff, right? Because we're not doing commissionable work here. We're actually selling. We're doing intake, and we're doing core, and there's a lot of admin stuff, and so there's overhead to that, right? And so it costs us money to bring in a deal and sell it, and we're not charging a wholesaler an upfront fee to do that, right? We're saying we'll take a piece of the deal, which allows them not to have that be a cost, right? It comes off. We're a line item on the HUD, but we're not an out-of-pocket expense. And so what that has allowed us to do, and it was really, when we're looking at Phoenix, we're looking at other markets, and we're saying, Florida, their assignment fees are still like in the 20s, right? So for us, we thought we had to start spreading our model out, and it works everywhere, right? What we're doing, all of our dispositions managers, we have some boots on the ground in Florida, but every act guy, every disposition guy, intake guys, they're all here. They're based out of our office in Phoenix. And so we're running Florida out of here, Georgia out of here. The Atlanta market's been amazing to us. We love doing deals out there. We just ventured into Dallas and Houston, and our first days in, we're crushing it. Already doing deals out there. We're about to venture into Salt Lake. So our goal at this point is expansion, market expansion, getting into other cities. But what that's doing for us is it's upward pressure now on our assignment fees, right? So now our assignment fees are starting to average out into a lot better than what they were before. So, to date, I think we're sitting at around 9,600 blended per deal.
I think the big takeaway for me in this conversation about, kind of the more granular stuff that we're talking about, the business stuff, is what can people do to shift their mindset and shift their focus from thinking putting so much stress and so much pressure and so much thought and so much activity on acquiring a property, and not taking that, at least some of that, if not, according to you, most of it, putting that on the other side, putting that on the buyer side?
I think it's the mindset of the herd mentality, right? So we've got a lot of people that are new entrepreneurs learning. And so when you're in a new and kind of an uncomfortable environment, you like to stand in a crowd because you blend in and nobody knows who you are, and you can just kind of hide there. And so I think that's what's happening. We've got a lot of people that are just doing, following, watching, seeing, and then emulating, and then standing in that group. What I would say, the mindset shift has to be, if you find yourself standing in a crowd, cool, great. That means you're in the right place. You're in the right circles. You're in the kind of the right energy. You're in the right field. Now I challenge you to turn around and look at the other side of the street, right? See what's there, because that's where you're going to find your money. Because if you're in a herd, your money is across the road. And that's exactly what happened to us, right? Yeah. Disposition side was completely left bare. It's still left bare. I mean, people have known of Keighley now for 3 years.
Right.
We've been doing this at a high level for a long time. Not, I mean, long, in 3 years, right? So, and everybody knows us. They see what we're doing. They're watching how we're doing it. We're not shy. We're not misdirecting people. We're telling you exactly what our model is. But I haven't found, there's not a dispositions mastery course out there, right? There's us. We've got a course. We're showing people what to do, but it's our full blueprint. But there's 15 acquisition wholesale courses out there, and nobody talking about how to sell those deals.
It's interesting. Mark Twain said it. Mark Twain's like, if you find yourself in the majority, you might want to reevaluate.
That's funny. I didn't even know I was channeling Mark Twain right now. So that's cool.
Well, I'm a nerd. I have a literature degree.
Awesome.
So, Neil, I think a lot of stuff you just said is really incredible. I think it's hopefully some people are really starting to get that, to resonate in them. You alluded to it a second ago. I want you to really dig in deep here for a second. We've been going for almost an hour, so I want to try to respect your time. Astro flipping.
Yeah.
It's all over my Facebook. I can't even, I almost bet you.
Yeah.
If I turn on my Facebook right now, there's going to be an ad for it.
I mean,
tell everybody what it is and what you guys are actually up to.
So we had a lot of people reach out to us, right? From podcasts, they see us at meetups, events, whatnot. They're like, how? What is it and how? And so, with that said, Josiah, my business partner, he came from that world, right? He was an intern for Cody Sperber. That was his first, 18 years old. He was Cody's intern, right? So he understood that whole education space. He knew how to do it. He knew how to market it. He knew how to sell it. He knew how it should be structured and some things that he'd like to do differently. And so when he went out on his own, he brought a lot of that information and a lot of that guidance to the table. And so, he definitely put a lot of work into creating that. He took all of our strategies, all of our systems. He took, what was in our minds, created this amazing 6-week course. And we basically just map out our blueprint, right? So from what did we do from the day we opened our doors to what's happening today? All of the little bits and pieces, even as esoteric as our mindset, right? Because daily we all do inner work here. It's a part of what it takes to be in this culture of what we have happening, right? So meditation, prayer, these, understanding the subconscious mind and its power over us, visualization techniques, really making sure that every one of those people out there working is optimized, both internally, mentally and spiritually, so that they can work their best. But then we talk about, how to evaluate the deal, but not only how to evaluate the deal, but how to evaluate it for the exit strategy, because we're teaching evaluation, but we're not teaching how to evaluate to be competitive for different types of exits. So we get into that. We talk about how we're attracting deals, how we generate our contracts. People want to know, how do you guys get 75 to 90 or 100 houses in the door, right? So we talk about our process to doing that. We give away our systems, all of the systems that we built. I mean, I think you can imagine running a wholesale operation doing 70 plus deals is going to have systems and automations in place to keep it fluid. And so we touch on that. Then we touch on some of our higher level act strategies, like really deconstructing motivation. And then a good portion of that course is our dispositions model. Where do we find our buyers? How do we get their email addresses? How do we get them to opt in? What time of day do we send our blast at? And why does it matter? What order are the pictures in, and what does it matter? We've done and sold so many houses that we've got data at this point where we know if you send a house out at 1 p.m. versus 10 a.m., you're going to have 7% higher open rates. And when you're talking about the volume that we're doing, 7% more eyes on your deals translating into more sales is like hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bottom line, right, at the end of the year. And so that's what we talk about. We give it all away.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. Before I let you go, I got to ask you one question because you alluded to it in the intro before we actually got going on the podcast. You alluded to this. You talked about networking and how important network is.
I love you for that, man. I think you're the network guy, dude.
So that's my whole thing. My book is going to come out towards the end of the year, maybe the beginning of the year on networking. It's really about relationships. So I want you to just talk about. You gave us some really great information, some tactical stuff, but it all comes back to relationships, especially when you start talking about building relationships with your buyers. Mm-hmm. Talk about just networking in general. What does networking mean to you?
Networking means to me of really coming out and seeing not what can everybody do for me, but I'm actually going to go out and talk to people, ask them questions, and find out what it is exactly that they're looking for. Right? Trying to find a way to connect, finding maybe something that you guys both have in common, a common struggle, a common question, something that you can do to create some resonance. And through that, you expand, right? So every person that you connect with, I mean, look, when we're talking about networking, and I'm talking about the deals that we attract to us, to this position, right? That's networking. Right? They had to have known about us somehow. That's because we're out in the world. We're talking to people. We're shaking hands. We're telling people what we do. We're asking them what they do, right? Being an active listener and walking into a conversation with your ears open and your mouth shut is the bomb. That right there is how you will really, really gain friends, be able to serve people, and in turn, you're going to benefit from it. So I think the networking aspect of it is the most inexpensive, the most highly converting type of marketing that you can ever do in wholesaling. I think close your wallets, okay? Stop spending money and get outside and shake some hands and talk to some people. And then when you've figured stuff out and you've grown a network and you want to learn, okay, now I need some tools. Now I need to really know how to dial this in. Now I really know how to optimize that. Spend money. But until then, stop it. Get out there, meet people, shake hands, learn, connect. Like, just do that. Connect. We get one shot at this. I'm so happy that I know you, right? We've networked. We know each other now. We're looking at each other. This is it. You're a part of my network. I'm a part of yours, right? And so through that, now I've got a friend who's doing deals in Birmingham, Alabama, right? So anytime I ever hear Alabama, all I'm going to think about is Brian, because I'm going to know that's my guy there. So if I can connect the dot in some way, shape, or form to monetize that, I will. Whether it benefits both of us, how that works, that's for the world to show us. But I know I got a friend. I know I have my network now extends all the way out there. So I think that's for everybody.
Love it, man. I appreciate you, Jamil. I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate just some really incredible nuggets that you shared that I think a lot of people, some tactical stuff that people are going to get from it, but also your story. I think a lot of times we kind of take for granted when we hear other people's stories, but there's so many valuable lessons in story and in people's stories and just where you had it all and then you lost it all and then you got it all back and then some. It's just it's so motivating, and it's inspiring. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this are going to get a lot out of it. So I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Guys, hit that subscribe button. We love you so much. We're going to link up all of Jamil's stuff. We're going to link it all up in the show notes, how you can find out more about astro flipping, how you can find out how to contact him, everything. We're going to link it all up in the show notes. We love you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.